That's true.
It does not need to be anything other than what it is, and what it is ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Welcome back to Shunned for Good Reason. I'm Anna.
I'm Tess.
And we're here again. How's your week?
Ooh. It was a long week. I'm gonna go with long.
How so?
I don't know, just work was long. It was the end of April. All the kids lose their minds in April.
You know, a lot of us lose our minds in April.
Yeah.
That's why the March hare is a thing.
Okay, that doesn't make sense. Because you said we lose our minds in April and then said the March hare was a thing.
Well, it's the same general time. So, in March, hares lose their minds, also known as rabbits, because they start waking up from hibernation and then they have to go in search of love, and they're really weird when they're doing that. Just all rabbits are weird when they're looking for sexy times. It's a whole thing. And they are just...
Are we all?
It's a problem. So, March hare is a thing because they are some of the ones who wake up and do it first, and they're like most notable in what they're doing. And then the entire world starts waking up and looking for sexy times, and humans kind of catch the bug and lose their minds. Because spring is coming, and things are waking back up in every way.
Well, that's one explanation. I don't know what that has to do with my students, but they seem to lose their minds anyways.
It's one explanation. You're right. People are just weird too, so that's the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my week was pretty intense too. A lot of job drama. Lots of people.
Drama, yeah.
Lots of people
Same.
leaving. Lots of people very upset.
Yeah. It was similar to my job. I even heard other people comment on my job, how much tension there was at my job.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension going around these days, just in general. And I mean, a lot of that is the political climate plus the climate, because this is the most snow in the past week that we've gotten all year.
Which was hardly any.
Yes, but it is the 2nd of March, 2nd of May. One of those ones that starts with an M-A.
It's almost May the 4th.
I know. Well, and tomorrow is one of our children's birthdays, so I should remember that. It's May already.
Yep.
It's all a problem.
It's been a strange year.
It has. But we're continuing on in our podcast series of Where Are We Now and How Did We Get Here? And for Where Are We Now this week, we are going to talk about Hillsong and megachurch disillusionment.
Theoretically my wheelhouse. I'm afraid I won't have much to contribute. I mean, if anybody's been disillusioned with megachurches, it's me, but...
I feel like you should have a lot to contribute, quite honestly.
I just feel like what I know is much less interesting than what people might want me to know.
Yeah, that's true. Well, because things only become really good news if they're super salacious. Yeah. And salacious has just never been our brand.
Well, yeah. Well, and I mean, to be clear, I have lots of very specific delusionments with megachurches, but like I didn't have
disillusionments. You mean?
Is that what I don't know what I said.
You said delusionments.
Oh,
I just wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I meant whatever you said.
I'm
not even gonna try again. Yes, disillusionments. What was I saying? Well, like there's no like I was not like personal witness to major scandals. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
I was indirect witness to lots of things. So, but not direct. So I don't know.
Yeah, we're always like the low-level volunteer to mid-level management of the churches that we were at. So all of the super salacious stuff was confined to the people who we did not have the patience to interact with.
Well, they didn't want to interact with us either.
It's true.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, we weren't in that circle.
No.
I know, I wasn't for sure.
I've been in and out of circles, but I usually do not have much patience for them. Just because I don't have patience for people who deliberately exclude others. Yeah. And that was a lot of the wheelhouse of the higher up circles. Was, we are doing all of these things together. But then if you had actual things that you had to do, if you had homework, if you had relationships that you needed to deal with outside of that, if you had any outside commitments at all, then you could not be in the circle because they couldn't have access to you whenever they wanted because you had to work. And that was always a detriment to my spiritual career. Oh no.
Apparently that's the thing.
It is, actually. So we're talking about Hillsong, we're talking about megachurch disillusionment, and what happens when spiritual brands essentially collapse and people are left to rebuild meaning outside of the communities that they've built.
Okay.
It just looked like you might have something to say.
No, I was just thinking that's... we'll see where it goes.
All right, so we're talking peripherally at least about Hillsong. So tell me about church worship music while you were growing up.
So I feel like it's an impossible thing to explain to somebody who hasn't experienced it. Like even like watching documentaries about Hillsong or even just like listening to some Hillsong music on Spotify or whatever. Like, it is so hard to explain to people the emotional investment that was a worship service for me growing up. Especially my teenage years specifically. Forget that. It started way before my teenage years. Like, I remember, one of my earliest memories, one of them, I have a few very specific early memories, which I'm not going to get into all of them now. But the one that's important for this conversation is I remember standing and then, again, it is so hard to explain. It's a large room that was my church sanctuary. That's what they called it. Growing up, which is not what most people imagine as a church sanctuary, right? Most people imagine pews and stained glass windows and I don't know, choir. What do they call those? Choir. I don't even know the name because we didn't have one.
They're called a choir loft.
Yeah, that. My church didn't have that as a kid. I think I've been to churches that had them, but I still never learned the name. But anyway, or at least to the point I can remember for this, it seems. Nothing that you probably, most people think of as the first thing that pops into your head when you think of church, right? You think of a pointy thing with crosses and stained glass windows.
By pointy thing, she means a church steeple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. If you didn't know that, I don't know if we can be friends. Anyway. So and then we had so it's this big, large square room with sound-proof rectangular panels all around it, sound dampening panels, something like that, all around it. flags hanging from the ceiling of all the different countries in the world. And these ugly, ugly green chairs. They were what color? It was like sage green. That's probably wrong, but that's the closest thing of color I can think of. So what color these chairs were? The cushions were sage green. The metal parts, they're like, they had the actual legs and armrests were metal. And those parts were white, and then they had this like wood piece that over the armrests. That was the armrest basically. It was like a, I don't know if it was real or fake or God knows, I don't know. and so just thousands of these chairs, and then and this is all I knew as a kid as what a church sanctuary was, right? They called it the living room. That's what they called it. My pastor called it the living room. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. It didn't look anything like a living room. It looked like what I just described, which is just this ridiculously large square room that was, more like a warehouse than anything else. Anyway, my earlier memory is being in this room, which I poorly described to you, and with my family, me, my mom, my dad, my sister, probably my great aunt and uncle were there too, because they were often there on a Sunday morning. And we kind of just had this row of people, and I mostly remember that because my great uncle would bring gum, juicy fruit gum, so that I could chew on it during service. And anyway, but I remember looking up at my dad during worship service, and I must have been a little bit older at this point, like maybe 8 or 9, because like I wasn't in Sunday school, and because usually my parents send us to Sunday school, but every now and then they wouldn't, and we'd join them in the main service, and especially when we got a little bit older, and I remember my dad, like seeing my dad crying during this worship service, right? During, where everybody's standing there, there's loud music, and my dad's like got his hands in the air, and I remember seeing tears coming out of his eyes. And that was what's the word? That moment had a strong impact on a lot of years of my life, right? Like seeing how much this musical worship experience, how much of an effect it had on my dad, and like as a kid, you're just kind of bored most of the time, right? Like to back it up just a hair, like as a little kid, going to mom and dad's service was boring, right? It's just there's music and then there's talking and you have to get through it and then it's over and you're bored the whole time. Mm-hmm. But like I remember seeing that and like, okay, something significant is happening here that I'm not getting somehow. Again, young, you don't know why or what or anything else. Just like, oh, like this is having an impact. Like I very rarely saw my dad cry when I was young, and so seeing it in this moment was significant, and it marked it as a significant experience, right? Sorry, I have a lot to say about this topic because you're asking me about musical worship, and it was a big part of my childhood. Can I give? So that was one specific memory. I think I can do two to try and get this across in any kind of understandable way, which I don't think anybody's going to understand even after I'm done. But, so my dad crying, significant, right? Like, and I knew, like you could feel, like it had to do with the music, it had to do with the words that were being sung, and, just kind of that moment overall. I knew that in my brain a little bit somehow. And I knew very broadly God was being worshipped, right? Like, there were some things I was able to put together, but at that point. But then when I was 13, so I was a little bit older, had a little bit better understanding of some of the things that were going on, I went to my first youth group retreat. And prior to going on this retreat, I hadn't really done much with the youth group. I had done a couple things with the middle school youth group, which was just kind of starting to. Nah, I'm not even. There's so many things, but basically, it was still very. It still had a lot of the Sunday school vibes to it, and that probably a lot of people experience with Bible stories, and music had been a big part of it. We would go to the adult service for music and worship service, and then go to the youth room for serving at that point in my life, until I went on this retreat. And then I went on this retreat, and we took a bus to some camp in the mountains, and there's a whole lot of other details of that story I'm not going to say because that's a different topic. But nothing salacious or scandalous or anything, just different story. And went to this retreat, and I'll never forget. Like, I was really nervous about this. I'd had experiences in the past of being away from home and having like homesickness and it being scary and stuff like that. And so I was a little nervous about this whole experience, and I had no idea what to expect really. But so we go on, like, I don't know, I think it's probably an hour and a half away on a bus, and we get there to this camp, and the first thing they do is tell us to go into this big gym that had a stage set up with like the whole rock and roll set up with lights and microphone and drum set and electric guitar and bass guitar and piano and or keyboard really, I guess, and smoke machines, and the lights are all off, so it's dark. I mean, and we walked into essentially just this concert atmosphere, which again I had never really experienced before. And so it was just this loud music. You walk in, it's loud, it's exciting, and there's lights flashing everywhere, and they start out really amped up, and there's like a Christian version of a mosh pit going on where everybody's jumping up and down, and these really exciting songs, and it's very rock and roll style atmosphere, which I didn't know that at the time, but it was all brand new to me. And and I remember like thinking, man, it's late. Like we drove on a bus. It was dark when we got here. I'm kind of tired and I want to go to bed. But this is a whole experience. It's still happening and ongoing. I wonder when it's gonna end.
Test the party at home.
I know, it's terrible. and I wasn't expecting, because I had that thought, and then the night kept going, and it was this very interesting thing to watch of how things would slow down and got much more emotional. Still music, right? Like there's the slower worship songs and God, and people started crying everywhere, and I'm just standing there like I could feel it, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't have the script yet. I got the script later. But this was the most outsider I ever felt in this scenario, right? And just looking around and watching people like bowing down and on their faces and crying, and there's smoke everywhere, and just a really intense experience, right? Like, and in the back of my head, and like, I don't know where my bed is, I want to go to bed, but that was my main thought that night, and for me. So my emotions were in a very different place than most people's emotions, but I was still watching them have them, right? And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I think I might be into it. Maybe I'll get some sleep, and we'll figure this out better tomorrow. And which happened, and it turned out I would get really into all that stuff as my teenage years progressed. But it's such a charged emotional experience, and I don't know. I like to tell that story just because like I remember watching it kind of from the outside a little bit, and being like, wow, that seems like a lot, but I kind of get it. I can see how they got here. And then I remember my dad crying during worship service, right? And so like I remember kind of seeing it as a spectacle before I really understood the script and what was going on, and really all of the reasons why these emotions were happening, which again I got to eventually. Um, but I feel like you almost have to at least have some understanding of just as an event. Forget all the theology, right? All the church scripts that really do play a big role in it. But if even leaving all those out, and I knew a little bit of them at the time, but I really didn't know many of them. It was still like, wow, this is really impressive. This is really like loud and emotional and strong and is doing things to people, right? I mean, I think that's probably my biggest takeaway. Like, this is doing things to people, and I don't know what. I didn't really understand at that point. Again, I had that memory in the back of my head of my dad crying, and like that probably there's something of that to this. Um, but it's a strong, powerful thing that does something to people. Was a big takeaway. I don't know. I'm trying to set it up, but it's hard to explain to you. If you've never been part of it, it's super hard to. And I think people who've been to rock concerts and stuff like that probably can start to get an idea um, of how I felt that night, that first night. That's the way I think of it. But I think they would, even people who've done that would have a hard time understanding how it developed past that point.
Well, and live music can be such a religious experience,
Oh,
just
yeah.
in general. So
Oh, yeah.
it's very easy to see how that was the whole thing. I did not experience Hillsong style worship services while I was growing up because those were very
Liberal, progressive,
liberal and progressive.
Yep.
Essentially, yeah. I grew up
Pentecostal.
You grew up Pentecostal.
Yeah.
I grew up. I've decided this week. This is where I have come to this week. I grew up redneck stoic.
Did you make? Sorry, never mind. Okay.
Yes. No, I was. Tess is referring to the notes app that we didn't realize that we shared.
No.
Because I've never used it until this week when I was trying to write down titles of things, and one of them was The Joys of Redneck Stoicism. Because I was thinking about my religious experiences and how redneck stoic really encapsulates it.
I thought that, that's so Anna, but it's my notes app, and I don't remember writing this.
Oh, no.
And I was trying to remember writing it, and I couldn't.
This week anyway. I was reflecting on the joys of redneck stoicism, because when Tess is describing the steeples and the choir loft and the pews, all of that were just so bougie in my upbringing.
Oh, okay.
Because if you could afford a steeple or a bell or a choir loft, oh my goodness, you are obviously doing religion in a really capitalistic way, and we could not get behind that.
Well, those were, and those things really more describe what I've come to think of as high religion, like Catholicism or Presbyterianism.
Right, and having a steeple in a lot of these churches, or having a bell in a lot of these churches, was super controversial because it was viewed as such a nod to high religion. So I grew up in the more redneck stoic communities where you would have a church building, but it would have been hand-hewn logs felled by the members of the church. And if you got over 50 people in your church, it was probably because you were saying too many nice things. Yeah. And you needed to go back farther to the fundamentals of the religion. And that went through to when we were missionaries, in that every single building had to be handmade by the people in the congregation. It's that very Amish, very Mennonite, very Hutterite, very redneck stoic version of religion
Yeah.
and fundamentalism, and
Well,
we had a little bit of crossover because we were missionaries. We ended up dealing with a lot of multinational people. So what came into that was a little bit of hippie influence in that stringed instruments were finally okay, and you had to have acoustic sets. You could do hymns, but the piano had to be donated. You couldn't have bought it. It was very thrifty. It was very reserved. It was beautiful because we did have hymnals, even if they had been donated or somebody had fished them out of the trash from some other church. You still had a hymnal, and it would often have the chords that you could use for the guitar, or it would have actual piano music to it. And you couldn't buy anything new for the church because that was entirely outside of the stoicism / thriftiness paradigm that we had made. So everything had to be crafted from the ground up on the purity of your religion.
Yeah.
And it was gorgeous because there was 4-point harmony to everything. And if you had somebody who could play for a church, they could really play. And if somebody donated a pump organ, it was the best thing that ever happened. But most of the churches that I went to did not have electricity.
Yeah, you've told us about that.
Yeah, and it was entirely different to all of this. So anything that was outside of this maximum of 50 to 100 congregants, because it had graduated to 100 from 50 by the time I finished high school, you could have up to 100 congregants and still be okay in the eyes of God. You probably hadn't strayed too far just because the expansion of population was going at such a rate.
Yeah. Well, and you were getting to a point where megachurches existed and you didn't want to be a megachurch.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to be a megachurch where I was growing up.
Yeah.
You wanted to be that pure and holy religion that God will look at and be like, no, this is the pure and holy ones. Yeah. That's what it is. So when I made the incredibly controversial decision to go into the north of America to get my Bible education at Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, which was very liberal for that.
Which, if anybody knows Moody, it's not actually super liberal, but it's comparatively it was.
Really not. But comparatively, it was the most liberal place I had ever been. And we had this small, like, amphitheater type classroom right outside my dorm. And they started doing this Friday night praise set. Because obviously.
Wasn't it Thursdays?
It could have been Thursdays.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
It might have started Fridays, but it went to Thursdays.
Yeah, probably.
However, it worked. It was on a night when I didn't have any holy things going and I didn't have any classes. And so I showed up and all the lights were off. And that was weird.
This is college for you.
This is college.
It's similar
for
to
me.
my 13-year-old experience.
Exactly.
I know.
The lights were off, and that was really strange. They had rolled in a keyboard as opposed to the piano usually used in that chapel / auditorium / coliseum. And they had
I went to a couple
electric guitars,
yeah.
not acoustic guitars. And the most controversial thing I had ever seen before that was somebody using an electric bass during Sunday morning service. Like, that was so controversial. That man was the pastor's son of one of the churches I went to, the one who played the electric bass, and he was the bad boy of the whole church.
Yeah.
He's probably some mega pastor now. I don't remember his name. But he was my age or slightly older, and it was so controversial that he had brought in an electric instrument to a church. So strange. But anyways, I come in here, lights are down low. They just did like a little red and blue light thing situation at the front, and
right.
These musicians
they didn't
were
have
playing.
The whole setup, but it was a little.
Yeah,
bit.
well, and these musicians were playing without music, like sheet music in front of them.
Right.
Which was so new to me. Like, from the band and orchestra and church world, You're supposed to have sheet music because it shows your humility.
Yeah.
And if you do it without sheet music, you're just showing off.
Because they did just chord progressions.
They just did chord progressions, and I had never been exposed to this in church style music. Nobody preached, and they were just doing low light music.
Yeah, it was just a song.
And it was all Hillsong music, of course, because it had to be Hillsong music at that time. Because Hillsong has been like the creators of all modern worship music for the past 3 decades at this point.
Yeah. I feel I should say just I mean, frankly, out of at least a little bit of respect for the artists involved, that like the church I grew up in, they would do Hillsong music, but also they had people who wrote a lot of their own. My church, like they were trying to be Hillsong, I think, especially on the music front. I mean, I don't know, but specifically, they really modeled their music and worship experiences on what Hillsong was doing, but they also had a lot of just really creative people who I would say were genuinely good at writing music. I don't know. I'm not a music expert, but to this day, I think it sounds like good music, right? Like I do. Like I think about it sometimes, which is because the music stays with you, right? Like.
Well, but also, I miss it because I got used to that.
I do too.
I got used to 1 to 5 times a week. You would be in a place where you could emote freely, and you knew the songs, you knew the progression. Even if you didn't know the songs, you technically kind of knew the songs.
And you would figure it out eventually.
You would figure it out.
Yeah.
And you felt like you were a part of something.
Yeah.
You were in a group of people, however many there were, with similar lighting to what you were used to, emoting in a way that you were used to.
Yeah.
And that is just so calling to your nervous system because the messaging of this whole thing is, this is where you belong. Yeah. This is home.
Yeah, and it's art and music and poetry, right? Like, and not... Well, and not even bad poetry. Like all the time. Sometimes it was. Poetry. Sometimes it was.
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard now because I disagree with so much of it, right?
I need to have an aside.
It's really hard.
That song that goes da 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 da, and my heart beats violently inside of my chest.
Oh man!
Is that one Hillsong?
No.
That one's from yours, right?
No.
Where's that one?
I actually know this.
I am so excited.
That one.
Because this is my least favorite worship song I've ever met.
I'm sorry. That was David Crowder Band. Who was, I'm pretty sure, based in Texas, and was this like super nerdy dude, again, who I did see in concert, who had like he wore these giant Coke bottle glasses and had this big old goatee and was just like the nerdiest dude in the universe. I don't know, I knew more about him when I was younger, but...
That makes sense. Okay, so here's
anyway, that's who wrote that song.
I have so many issues with this. And I have to bring them up because this is the same era of worship music that we're talking about. So, the original chorus of this goes, and heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart beats violently inside of my chest. I hate sloppy kisses. They are so bad. And a lot of people do. So there was backlash to this. A lot of us were like, sloppy wet kiss sounds really gross. And I don't want to be involved with that. And that kind of takes me out of it. And
what was the replacement?
He heard it. And the replacement was, and heaven meets earth like an unforeseen kiss. Which is so unconsensual.
So much worse. I haven't thought about that so long.
So I was entirely enamored by this whole worship service.
I hadn't even thought about it with my post-church brain.
Okay to cry for a while, and that was great. And then they started talking about either sloppy kisses or non-consensual kisses, and I was out. Like, that was part of my deconstruction. I can't do this anymore. You're either sloppy or you're getting me raped. I can't handle either of these things. Very bad. I'm sorry, David Crowder. But you need to do better.
I wonder what that guy's doing now.
Ugh, I have no idea.
He was just like such a clearly painfully artistic human being.
I know.
Who
well, but
was
that's
caught up in
what drove so many of these places.
Yeah.
So Hillsong obviously got some painfully artistic people
Oh yeah.
together with some really good speakers. And
Yeah.
this is way back in Australia when they founded this.
Yeah.
And those people were doing what they could, and they were funded by white colonialist, naturally, people. But they're not the only people who did this. Hillsong did this. One Chapel is doing this currently. New Life does this. All of these incredibly capitalistic models who find a very great team of incredibly artistic, well-meaning people and volunteers, and at least one very charismatic speaker. And they take that team, they give them everything they could ever want to thrive, and they fund them so well that they don't have to think about anything monetarily. And then they take that and monetize it into tithing for thousands to millions of people. So Hillsong obviously is the most famous example because they've gotten the most celebrity endorsement. But as I said, New Life has also taken this model. One Chapel has taken this model.
New Life's band was called Desperation.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was very good.
Yeah, they did good. Like, that's the part that kills me to this day. Is Hillsong, Desperation, David Crowder, Gunker, like, good music.
Right.
Like,
and
from an artistic perspective.
You can base an entire religious movement off of one good musician.
Right.
As long as you monetize them appropriately and get the best following you can monetize it and blow off like Hillsong did to up to 100 million people a year, easily.
Yeah. I thought we watched that Hillsong documentary and like.
Yeah, The Secrets of Hillsong is a 4-part documentary which premiered in 2023, I want to say. And we did watch the first 2 of the 4-part series this morning and listened to just a little bit of Hillsong in preparation for this episode.
My first thought, though, after we were done, was it would be so interesting to record a podcast in the style of I'll say a New Life church service. I don't know how we do it, but like,
well, there would have to be like a 15-minute spot where we guilt people into subscribing to our Patreon, because it's God's will that you be involved in this, and we're so glad you're here, and we're grateful for the millions of hours that you've put into volunteering for this podcast. And we're just so grateful for everyone. Let me call out a few names individually. Bob, who's working on our soundboard, and then Tiffany, who's in charge of taking care of everybody's children. Well, they work 80 to 90 hours a week. And then this person who did the lights, and this person who's working at the bookstore. And make sure you say hi to all of our lovely volunteers at the coffee shop back there. On your way out, grab a cup of coffee. If you can't pay for it, that's fine. If you can pay more for it, that's awesome too. Just whatever works for you. And see, I'm allowed to do the tithing spot. Yeah, I'm allowed to do the tithing and announcement spot because I'm a woman.
Oh no. Oh jeez.
But we're fine.
Yeah.
It would be very interesting to do a podcast in that style, but less interesting because a lot of megachurches are already doing podcasts in that style.
Yeah. Well, no, what I mean, I don't mean do a podcast, and I mean just do the actual, like, music, and then the sermon, and then the like back into music and altar call, and like it is such an experience.
It is.
Like it's hard to describe, and like that, like you said, you miss it, and I miss it. That was my thought too. Like when I knew we were gonna do this, was just like, I miss. There are things I miss. There's a lot of things I don't miss, to be clear, but there are things I miss. Like it was fun. It's a rare, weird, strange, unusual.
Well, you feel like you're just in such great synchronicity with the people around you.
Yeah, and
you feel like you share so much with them.
Yeah, and music and good public speaking and all these things can give you such an emotional. I was gonna say high, but that isn't even right. But it's more like emotional roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Right, where it's fun to a certain extent, right? Like I don't even know if fun's the right word, but it's.
No, it is because
memorable. It's human. It's I don't know.
So I'm going to explain this to you how I explained it to other people when I discovered adult words when I went to college.
But can I say something real quick?
Okay, go for it.
I think it's interesting that we both have semi-similar things to say about it, considering we have very different histories with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you grew up in with a much less modern rock and roll version than I did. But it was still still a huge emphasis on music. There was still a huge emphasis on good music, I would say, based
absolutely.
on what you said.
We had amazing music.
Yeah. Good. I guess it's just good music comes in.
It was more
lots
bluegrass,
of different forms,
but it was still great music.
Yeah, but music comes in lots of forms, and they can still be good music. And I would submit that I very much have always thought what I grew up with was definitely good music. Like the actual artistic production was well done in almost every case I can think of.
Well, and I can hear in the back of my head a million people that I've known who were super into indie artists or the Beatles or whichever artist they decided was the epitome of music.
Oh, for sure.
And they're all screaming, going, "That's not good music!" And I disagree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Because if you're feeling things to it, it is good music.
Right.
If it makes you hate it, it's good music. If it makes you love it, it's good music.
Yeah.
And here is where I circle back to when I discovered adult words.
Yeah.
This is how I described it. I said it was subpar because the only reason that you wanted to do those songs in that order with those chord progressions was to create an artificial spiritual orgasm. Which is exactly how it feels if you're doing a good worship set. Or if you're doing a good live music set.
But
because you're building up. There's a climax, and then everybody cries.
Yeah.
Shouldn't necessarily happen in every orgasm, just for the record. But in a good spiritual / live music orgasm, you build this up until everybody cries, and you let down, and the bass drops, and it gets even more intense. And people are hugging the people.
But that's like the height of art. Right?
Arguably, yes.
Arguably. Yeah, sure. But like to have people feel that way.
If you can make somebody feel a spiritual orgasm, you are succeeding at music. Even if it's worship music.
Oh, right.
Even if it's artificially induced. Even if you used a smoke machine or a fog machine or
it's all part of the
lighting
experience.
To do that.
Yeah.
You have created an experience that makes people capable of doing this.
Yeah.
Which conveys a sense of both intimacy and emotionality and just honesty that you're allowed to do all of these things together, which is what these churches prey on.
Yeah. Well, so why is subpar the words?
Because if you are doing Jesus right,
you
shouldn't need an emotional orgasm. Hence, the joys of being a redneck stoic.
The stoicism was.
It's the stoicism. If you have to rely on emotionality to do this, you are doing it wrong. You should be able to rely on reason
Right.
and judgment and not make people feel inferior or open to other people around them, because that is dangerous. Stoicism.
Yeah. Well, but and that's where the honesty of the situation comes in, and what I learned, where you start to learn, where you start to understand the script and why people are crying specifically. As I because my experience of this went from that first night at youth camp, right, and then and then there was a second night, and then I think we went home, but but the second night you get a little bit more of the script, and then as I went through middle school and into high school, like they started to do this as like a whole church service for the young people on a regular basis, where starting for me in junior high, not long after that first youth conference I went to, they started for middle school on Tuesday nights. We would have a 2-hour service where like the first 45 minutes was basically what I described that happened at the youth conference. We go into this space that was very rock and roll, dark lights, smoke, music, right? And we'd have 45 minutes of that, and then we'd have about 45 minutes to an hour of sermon, which, like, it's so fascinating to me because, especially now, from my perspective, and even then, I knew, like, middle schoolers sitting there for a 45-minute,
it's very impressive,
hour-long sermon, but we did,
mm-hmm.
and we liked it. Like, I wanted, as a 13-year-old, whatever I was, person wanted to go to this service and listen to this, to go through this whole experience. Because we'd have about 45 minutes of music, about 45 minutes of sermon, and then they would end with about another 15 minutes of music and altar call type thing. Like, every week. Like, it was very consistently similar. But it was enjoyable, even as a, I don't know, maybe especially as 13-year-old.
Well, yes, but I think a lot of that is that, yes, they made it palatable and they made it good and they made you want to be there. But how they made you want to be there was by using those things as a tool of identity and belonging.
Yeah.
And when you come into that space as a middle schooler and you sit through 45 minutes of this and you see your friends emotionally reacting and you're emotionally reacting and people are encouraging you to emotionally react, and the adults who are allowed to be in the room are also emotionally reacting to this. And then somebody gets up and says, every other middle schooler in the world is stupid except for you guys, and you guys are here and you want to learn and you want to be a part of this community. It's an ecosystem that you're part of. It's a spiritual ecosystem. Yeah. And it is your identity and it is your world and it is your community. And it takes a significant time commitment, not just on your part, but on the part of everybody who had to drive you there as a middle schooler and hang out 45 minutes from home.
Drop me off.
Yeah.
Drop me off, pick me up, whatever order that goes in.
But it became less of a church service and more of a, this is our identity. This is our world.
Oh, for sure.
We do New Life Church. And that's where it went from I'm a member of this church to, we do church here.
Yeah.
Because you could previously tithe or give and go to a church building for 45 minutes to 3 hours, just depending on your church, one time a week, and that would be fine. But when it moved from a religion to an identity, in the megachurch movement specifically, and there's a lot of other places it became an identity before that, this meant time commitment, volunteer commitment. If you drive your child here because they need to be involved in their own spiritual thing or you're a bad parent, you might as well volunteer for 2 hours while they're here and give us free labor while you wait to drive your child back. And if you don't do that, then you are not a good parent because you are not facilitating their spiritual interaction with Jesus. and the music was the hook.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Well, the music and the message was important too, because I mean that's what I was gonna go was like learning the script and like this understanding of like it's a very hypnotic message, I guess, in that like it's very circular in that like they're preaching this is the things you shouldn't do, this is the things you shouldn't think about, you shouldn't be doing these things, but you can be saved from these things by this all-knowing omnipotent God who's gracious enough to have done all these things in order to be able to save you, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have to save yourself. God's going to save you. You just have to repent, which is just another word for saving yourself in retrospect. Right? But that's not how it's presented, right? It's presented as
right.
God is saving you, and all you have to do is repent, right? And so you repent, and it's this, and usually it's during a music portion that you're repenting and saying, "I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I had impure thoughts, and I'm sorry that I did all these things wrong, and I'm such a terrible person, and will you forgive me?" And of course, God does forgive you. That's the whole thing, right? And so you have a moment of, theoretically or usually, you have a moment of realizing, oh, God is gracious and forgiving, and so I'm forgiven, and I can get up and try again, right? Like that's the whole thing. It's this whole script, and you can do it once a week to twice a week to 3 times a week. There's always something to repent of. There's always something to be forgiven of. There's always something to try again not to do.
So I'm going to go into the message portion of our series. I'm not actually. I'm going to share with you from Human Spirit Hypnotherapy.
That's what I get for bringing up hypnotism.
No, because you're absolutely right. This is what it is. The 7 rules of the mind are the laws of hypnotism, or the laws of hypnagogic suggestion. And the first one is that every thought or idea causes a physical reaction. So your thoughts directly affect what your body is doing. This is what we do with music. This is how we bring you in. And then when you get to the second one, it is what is expected tends to be realized. The brain acts on the mental images you have implanted into it with your songs, which turns expected outcomes into the reality. And you have to not worry about things because that is programming in unpleasant expectations. So you have to bring people out of the world that they've been living in and into your own world of hypnotic music and messaging.
Oh, yeah.
Then, imagination is more powerful than knowledge. So when you're dealing with the mind, imagination is always going to override either reason or logic. Whatever it is that you rely on, your imagination and what they have been causing you to visualize through this music and through their introductions to the sermon is what's actually going to take precedence in your mind. Opposite suggestions cannot be held at the same time. So you can't have this, what do we call it?
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, cognitive dissonance. It doesn't exist in this space. We can't have it anymore. You believe one thing at a time, and you can go back and examine how it reacts with other things another time. Because right now we're just in this space that we've made for you that has only this one truth that you need to worry about. And you don't need to worry about anything outside of this room that might disagree with that. Put it to the side.
Oh, geez.
And now that we have realized that that is the only truth that we have to deal with, it's going to stay there in your mind. You're going to think about it. As I say, at least one small story from my own life with really good pacing.
This is how I got called to be a missionary.
Really good pacing. That makes you realize that your whole life has responded to this one thing that I hold in my hand right here.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, this is so how servants went when I
And
was
until
a
something
teenager.
replaces this
Probably before
idea that
too.
I hold in my left hand, until something comes in to replace that, this is going to be your only truth. And you're going to look at this right here and nothing else as I move it side to side, up and down to keep your attention on it. Because the laws of visual attraction say that I need to move this at least once every 6 seconds, but I'm going to do it at least once every 4 so that you understand what I am showing to you and think about that and only that, and it cannot be replaced because you're still focusing on it because it's moving. And then once I say that again and you realize it's been moving this whole time, and you haven't even noticed that it was moving until I said it was moving, then we have a mental trend. So a habit or suggestion where you look away for a second because I make you focus on something else, but then I move that hand again and you realize you've been looking at the hand the whole time. This is a mental habit. You come back to it, and then you come back to it, and then you come back to it. And as you loop it around and around and around, it gains more and more and more importance. And in a lot of these situations, you've not only emphasized the importance in the songs that you chose and in the introduction that you chose to give, but you can also put it, because you've got a pretty drastic budget, on a hydraulic lift that will just make it go farther and farther and farther into the limelight of attention of your audience. And every time we loop around, it becomes harder to not track that thing that I am showing you. And then the law of reverse effort is something that is trying too hard. So if I explain it to you too hard, like I've just done,
Right.
you stop watching it.
Yeah.
You have to make sure you don't let anybody focus on that thing specifically. It's just things around that thing. And that thing moves in response to the things that you're saying, but you're still focusing on that one thing itself. Those are the 7 rules of the mind. Thoughts and ideas cause a physical reaction. What is expected is realized. Imagination is more powerful than actual knowledge. Opposite suggestions cannot be held at the same time. Once an idea is accepted, it will remain until replaced. Each suggestion is acted upon creates less opposition or a mental trend. And then the greater the conscious effort, the less the subconscious response, which is why we want you to not know where your bag is, to not know where your bed is, to have just gotten off a bus and not eaten dinner yet, and to not know what time it is. Because the more we can divorce you from reality, the more we can divorce you from reality, the more we can make more things be under question, the less you're going to question it.
No, for sure. No, it's it's a production. It's a spectacle. Like I said, it's a and I'm curious to this day, like how much the people putting it all together like thought about it that way, or there's one. To this day, there's one person I would love to talk to and ask questions.
Who is that?
It was the. It was the primary lead singer for most of my high school experience at church. Ooh, I don't know. Like I so wonder so many of the things that went through that guy's head in his life, because he was leading so much of this experience, right? That and said so many things that I listened to, right? And I never really just met him or talked to him in real life, as opposed to some of the pastors and stuff at the time. I don't know, something about him. I never got to talk to him, but I would love to. I'm so curious. His name was John Egan. He was a very interesting person from my perspective.
So you know Hillsong has a college, right?
Yeah.
And you have different tracks at that college.
Yeah.
Being able to produce this environment was actually one of the tracks at the college. And they...
That makes sense.
Yeah. So
I'm sure it was at my church too.
They did actually teach this.
Yeah.
And they taught it very intentionally.
Yeah.
It was highly structured and highly professional, because that's how you create the same feeling
Oh, yeah.
when you move from Hillsong, Australia to Hillsong, New York, to Hillsong, LA, to Hillsong, Dallas.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you're always going to feel like you're at exactly the same church because they're using exactly the same things. And maybe your accent is a little bit different, or maybe the people are wearing something a little bit different. But
No, my church did the same thing.
They've all been required to go to Hillsong College before being that involved. And it's a 2 to 4 year program last I checked, which was, I'll admit, quite a while ago. But they do teach this homogeneity of service.
Oh, yeah. No, my church did the same thing. They had a whole music college, school. I don't remember what they called it, but it was a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
So, yes, they are doing it intentionally.
Yeah. Well, like, I wonder how much of the, I don't know. I just want to know. I'd be curious. I'd be fascinated to know from them what they were thinking about it. Because, like, they're part of it, right? Like, I don't know. I'd be so fascinated to know.
Yeah.
That's a...
So, having been to Bible school music college, more than one Bible school, yes, they were thinking about it. Yes, they did it intentionally. Yes, we did all of it on purpose. And no, we did not think about it. Every color that is there is meant to make you feel a specific emotion.
Yeah.
We used color theory a lot. We used timing a lot. Choreography was involved. And a lot of people think of choreography as dancing, but no, choreography is exactly how you turn the page in your music. Even if you're at one of the places that uses sheet music, you're still using choreography. The spacing and timing of your lights and your light situation are also taken into account. And then you want to bring everybody into the space feeling happy. You want to bring them down hard. You want to then make them feel guilty. And then you want to have an altar call / a tithing situation. Usually at the beginning, it'll be more of a tithing situation, so you feel like you're part of the in-group because you've contributed to be here. You can switch that to the end if that's just what works better for your congregation. But then you need to know what the sermon is about so that you can time and choreograph the songs to make people feel either joyful or hopeful or sad or depressed or guilty of something. And then you play into that, the pastor builds on that, and then your break comes in to give people a come to Jesus moment. You can put your tithe there if that's where you want your tithe. And then you come down off that onto a hopeful note. Has to be a hopeful note. Oh, yeah. Because otherwise people won't talk to each other about how happy they are to be there.
For sure.
It has to be hopeful at the end. You bring up the lights as you're playing the band off, and then people say hi to those around them, realize they've been crying in front of people they actually knew from work. It has to be very well choreographed for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, I agree.
The theories of Bible school, music school, and music worship and music leading, and whatever it is they want you to do, are all mostly based on hypnagogic principles from the 1940s through 70s.
That tracks.
Yep.
I know. I experienced it. I mean, that's what, and I think that's why, like I said at the beginning, it's so hard to explain to people who haven't experienced it. Like it's a weird experience.
Because you would say you were a chicken, right? If I told you to.
I don't know about that. But,
that's a hypnotism joke. It's
okay. Jeez. Well, and like for me specifically, like it would have been harder for me to buy, I think, if it hadn't been for like my family experience and like the whole thing with my dad crying, and like there was a lot of things that went into that for me, over my life and experience with church that made it, I think, a lot harder for me to be skeptical, even just from the get-go.
Yeah.
And because my parents were bought into it, all my friends' parents were bought into it, all my friends were bought into it. Like it's just the way the world is, right? Like there's not even I didn't even know anything outside of that world.
Well, and that's why it's such a great tool, is because your friends and your parents' friends, they had all come to the same place looking for the same thing.
Yeah. Well, for sure.
Because formal religion had become too formal for them. They
Yeah.
were looking for a place that they could feel like they belonged. And what the church did when they came in was say, not only do you belong, but you are in charge of helping make sure these other people feel like they belong.
Yeah.
And then you foist off that responsibility from pastor and ministry team to individuals in the congregation. And then they're in charge of making sure that their group feels like the in group, which is what happened with your family.
Oh, yeah.
So they were never in high-ranking positions in the church itself.
No.
But they took things very seriously, as did their friends.
Yeah.
So their entire sense of community and belonging to this day relies on the people that they met when they were told it was their responsibility to be someone's in-group.
Oh, yeah. What was I going to say? Crap.
So that's why we bring in small group leaders. Is because the pyramid scheme that is modern church would not be the same without foisting off responsibility onto unpaid people.
Yeah.
Because the more you feel like you belong, the more you can make somebody else feel like they belong. The more you make somebody else feel like they belong, the more you can bring them into your inner circle, get them to volunteer, and then reach out to more people and more people and more people.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, the whole Pentecostal movement is based on this idea that you personally have access to God, right? Like, and like that really strong push to give you the responsibility of connecting with God. And, you know, and you do that by going to church and going to Bible study and
volunteering.
And volunteering and
giving your money.
Yeah.
And giving your time.
Yeah.
And then going to Bible school, even if it's not accredited. Because accreditation isn't God's will.
Well, that's not what Moody thought.
That's not what Moody thought. Or what some other Bible colleges I'm affiliated with think.
Yeah. You aren't affiliated with Bible colleges now.
I am technically not affiliated with Bible colleges right now. You're absolutely right.
They sure don't want to be affiliated with us.
They do not. That's okay. But either way, it is essentially a pyramid scheme.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it really is.
Which is where Hillsong met its downfall. Which is a huge exaggeration because they're not downfallen by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't know. Where are they now? Are they
They're
still
incredibly influential.
So is New Life, so I don't know.
In all of the religious communities.
That's baffling to me how that continues. Like, it's really... well, it really, I guess, reflective of how powerful of an influence Christianity / evangelicalism / Pentecostalism is in the current world. Like, because it has to be, in order for those two things to still exist, it has to be a very populous mainline thing, or they would have just fallen to pieces so long ago. Right? Like, you know, it's just it's the only way they continue to be a thing. It's just, for so many people, this is just life. There isn't anything outside of it. And I mean, the fact that I am the only one of my family members I know of who has left the evangelical church.
Yeah.
In this, you know, the year of our Lord, anyway, 2026. That's crazy. To me.
We are going to take a break. And then we'll come back and talk about the modern influence of Hillsong and other megachurches.
Oh, goody.
Aren't you excited?
Oh, blah.
You can't say blah.
I'm excited.
Well, if you're not happy to be here, then you're not part of the megachurch. Yeah,
I'm not.
You're not happy. You're not part of the megachurch.
Oh, jeez. You are bad.
I know. It's because I try intentionally not to hypnotize you.